Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. I am your host, David, joining you again in the year that is 2020 as we kick things off with another great episode. And I am joined today by Misa, aka Misa On Wheels, across the social media. Misa, how are you doing today?
Hi, David. I'm doing really well. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. I am so excited that you are here to join us today, not only on the podcast, but you are the first person that I am recording with directly from a phone call. So thank you so much for being my guinea pig today.
Oh, thank you. It's exciting, and I appreciate you accommodating that for me, and it'll be definitely an experience for both of us.
Absolutely. Now, it's rare that I get someone that is very focused on a particular fandom, and your fandom is survival horror video games.
Definitely.
How did you get into, I guess, start me off with how you got into video games to begin with.
So, well, goodness, way back in the day, let me think. So probably when I was about 5 or 6, I was over at one of my best friend's houses, and we were at her aunt's house that time, and she was playing an old Genesis game, and I can't remember what it was for the life of me, but I just remember being completely enthralled by it. And that Christmas, her and I both asked Santa for a PlayStation 1, and that's kind of what started the whole thing.
Oh my goodness, that takes me back, because I remember, because I always joke like I'm so old, you know. I started off with like the Nintendo way back in the day, and I remember when I got a PlayStation 1 when they were coming out, I was, I think I was in like high school at the time.
Oh man, that was such a great console though. I just remember being so excited about it, and that was like my first one that I really owned and like was mine, so I was pumped.
Now, how did you get into survival horror video games? You didn't start off with survival horror, right?
No. I started out with, one of my two first games, Spyro the Dragon and A Bug's Life, the old Pixar movie. So the video game based on the movie there. So those were very far removed from survival horror. But I was always a big fan of horror movies. Like even as a little girl, when I was probably about that same age, around like 6 or 7, I remember watching movies like Silence of the Lambs, Predator, some of my all-time favorites with my dad when I was really young. Just really enjoying those movies and really getting a thrill from that. So I think as I grew up, that carried over into video games and kind of exploring that media as well.
Oh my goodness. I know we have 3 kids, and we just got them starting to watch like Stranger Things, and they watch Silver Bullet, which is a very classic like 70s movie. And we got them watching that, but there's still some stuff where I'm like, I don't know, but they've seen enough Stranger Things now where it's like, okay, they're good at, for the most part.
So funny. It's actually funny. I think everyone responds to those kind of things in different ways, whereas I have a younger sibling, only 2 years apart, but about the same age when we were growing up. And he was absolutely not responsive the same way as I was. He was terrified, whereas I loved it and just ate it up as a kid. So I think it all depends on the person.
It absolutely does. I saw Jaws at probably like 3rd or 4th grade, and I had nightmares. I thought Jaws would be in the bathtub and in the toilet. And I always had to make sure that the lights were on and the shower curtain was open before I even went into the bathroom.
Oh my goodness. I've had similar experiences. What did it for me was the old, oh my goodness, I think it was 1953 House of Wax with Vincent Price. That absolutely terrified me, but I loved it. And I remember sleeping under the covers because I got so creeped out at a couple scenes, and just, I don't know, my mind just went wild at that point.
Oh my goodness. With survival horror, one of the ones that you are like apparently really big into, and of course a lot of other people are as well, is the Resident Evil series. And I've never played Resident Evil. I've watched people play, and in fact, on Twitch, I've enjoyed watching people play like the remake of Resident Evil 2, I believe, where it's been great to see. Like, I can't do those type of games, so it's been great to see other people play them and me enjoy the story. But what was it about the Resident Evil franchise that drew you to it?
Goodness, I think it just has its own feel. Like, there's something about that franchise, especially the earlier games, as well as the remake of the second game. Just how well they kept that original feel of creepiness. And I think a big thing too with the earlier games is it wasn't so much combat and constant, blood and gore and smash all the time. It was more leading up to that creepiness and building an environment that just made you feel so uncomfortable as you're playing through. And I think that's just awesome. Like the game itself, pardon me, less so with some of the later games. But kind of just that whole idea of, less action, but more environment and more building the creepiness. I think that's really what drew me in.
Do you have a favorite game?
Oh, goodness. Let me see. I would say toss-up between 1 and 4.
4 is the one with where they had the character designs from real people, right? Like Jean Reno was one of the character designs.
You know what? I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I know that one's certainly the most realistic of the earlier ones, but that would make sense.
Let me check. Let me see if that's the one I'm thinking of. I bet it's not. Let me see, because I hate getting things wrong. Jean Reno for Resident Evil. I still can't tell you. It's not telling me. It's not being nice. Oh well.
No, that's okay. I know, just speaking of the character design itself in that game, like, I feel like at the time it was super advanced in terms of graphics and just, I don't know, just the outdoor environment, as opposed to some of the earlier ones where it's like, oh, you're in a mansion, you're in an underground laboratory, where they have those creepy indoor environments.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like where you kind of start out in 4, outside of this creepy European village. And just the fact that they can make it so creepy while still just like being outside in the woods before you really encounter any human-esque enemies, I think that was really cool.
What makes a great Resident Evil game?
I would say kind of going back to the whole idea of the environment's a huge thing, like building just that really creepy atmosphere that, like, if you turn the lights out, you're completely submerged. And also, I think the characters themselves, between, where you don't get too much backstory with some of the earlier games, it was more just, hey, you either get to choose to be the guy or choose to be the gal. But I feel like even just that alone and kind of traveling through, the creepy mansion or these really like sketchy underground areas with the character, I feel like you get connected with them and, going through these like creepy places together, and I feel like you get this like weird bond. So I think that kind of also goes hand in hand with, building that environment.
Mm-hmm. It is definitely something I like. Again, not playing it. There are times where like I jump. Like, it scares me, whether it's the music or just all of a sudden, like, there's somebody in your face right there. I don't know. Like, I could never. I am not that type of. I'm not the audience for that game.
Oh my goodness, no, I totally understand that. And another thing to add onto your point is just the whole idea of the creepy music, especially in the earlier games. One of the things that really stuck out to me was whenever you would enter like the safe room or the safe area, it would have this really creepy, almost like somewhat upbeat well, more upbeat music compared to the rest of the game. And just the music score, like being in that room, even though nothing could like come in there and get you or jump out at you, I think that alone was just so crazy.
It is definitely something like just watching people play that, and it's like you hear the footsteps and you're trying to like track where the footsteps are and track what's going to be coming at you next. And I guess one of the other things is that I love about the series, which I had no clue until I saw people play it, is like you were limited on what you were carrying, and you had to make decisions on what you were going to carry going out of like the safe rooms.
Oh, yeah. Like, planning is another huge part of those games, especially the earlier ones and also like the remake of 2. They tweaked some things to make it a bit easier, but at the same time, like, it's all about, finding that balance. Like, oh, I can only carry, so many bullets in one gun, and I can't carry my knife though if I need this key item in order to move on with the game. So you kind of have to try to predict, especially if you don't know what's coming next. Take a risk analysis, like how many zombies am I going to run into? Can I, really move on? And if I get to that point in the game, I'm not going to have my weapons. So it's definitely kind of a balancing aspect for it.
Have you played the remake of 2?
Yeah, oh my goodness, yes. I got it when it first came out, and I think I played through it like 3 or 4 times at this point. I loved it.
Are you excited that, because I know with the Resident Evil franchise, it's one of those franchises that have gone, they've done so many games, but now with the remake of 2, and I think that they've got a remake of 3 coming out, or that they're working on it. Is the Resident Evil franchise like getting a resurgence because of the games?
I definitely think so. I mean, just the fandom alone, like I know we'll probably be discussing this a little later, but just the whole, even like the cosplay community and the folks who have kind of just always been a fan of these games before the remake, I think they're getting really excited about it. And with that, they're sharing things on social media and spreading word. And I feel like that's attracting a lot of new fans. So I think there's definitely a resurgence in the fandom and in the games themselves.
What other Resident Evil, or not Resident Evil, what other survival horror games do you like, or would you recommend to people to check out? Because I know that there's a lot that you listed. I know that my wife was really big into the Fatal Frame series.
Oh, that's a good series. That's definitely like way at the top of my list of recommendations. But that's another one that, totally different setting than the Resident Evil series. You're in this old mansion in Japan and you're investigating the disappearance of your brother in the first game, and all you have is this creepy antique camera that, can capture spirits. And that's like your one thing. You don't have any guns or knives or really anything besides that. So it's actually horrifying. And those kind of games too. Whereas, in Resident Evil, you'll have like weapons, and in the later games where you can carry more items, kind of a small arsenal at hand. Whereas games like Fatal Frame, you're pretty much defenseless and are relying on your own kind of skills and tricks to be able to get through the game. So I think in a way it makes it a lot scarier. Also, the whole idea that you're fighting these like supernatural ghosts as opposed to like a physical zombie or any other monster you're going to encounter in Resident Evil. So I definitely recommend Fatal Frame. I would say the first 3 games were the ones I'm most familiar with. I know there was a handheld version, and I think there was also an app at some point. But yeah, definitely the first 3 were fantastic. One that's really similar to that in the sense that you're pretty much, kind of, I don't want to say like a helpless character, but the Clock Tower series is another great one. The one I'm most familiar with is Clock Tower 3.
Mm-hmm.
You're basically this school-aged girl fighting supernatural beings, and instead of a camera, you pretty much run away the whole game, or your one defense in the beginning is just to splash them with holy water. So it's definitely a different experience than having guns or any other weapon.
Like the Resident Evil franchise has its own thing, but when you're exploring like these new like survival horror games, like what are you looking for in a game? What makes you pick up the game and then go beyond like the first hour or two to get into it?
Gameplay is huge. I always say what goes along with that is like the types of items that you can use. And meaning, like, is this going to be more of a puzzle-based game, or is this going to be more just straight-up survival, where I only have limited bullets or something like that? And I think really kind of what draws me in would definitely be the creepiness factor. That's a huge one for me. Like, if I can scare my pants off within like the first hour, I'm like, that was the keeper, and I'll end up playing through the whole thing.
If you, I guess one of the games that you had listed is that you recommended is The Last of Us. Do you consider that like a survival horror game?
You know what? That's a good question. Because I had actually, over the years, I've played that game countless times. And I kind of go back and forth on that one. I would almost consider it like a movie in a way, like almost like a movie game. I feel like you're so like immersed within not only the environment, but the connections and the characters and whatnot. But when you really like separate like just out the elements, like, there are these creatures that have been kind of taken over by this fungal parasite and whatnot, and they're pretty much, zombies, quote unquote, in a sense. So, I mean, when you break it down to those kind of elements, I could see, considering that at the end of the day, survival horror. And also, too, when you switch between the main character, Joel, who's, the adult, strong male with his arsenal of weapons and can craft up anything he needs. But there's a huge part of the game, a whole chapter where you get to play as Ellie, the little girl he's escorting in the game. And I think that just kind of brings on a whole new experience. And I would definitely say between those two gameplays, hers would definitely be more of a survival horror, and his would be more action.
Mm-hmm. I know that one of the people, because again, not survival horror, I get scared. I'm big scaredy pants. I don't watch horror movies at nighttime. I watch them during the daytime, so that way I can watch a comedy or something afterwards. But I remember someone telling me like Last of Us like is basically like the things that you're going against are like plant zombies, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like, pretty much like some of them, not to like spoil it for anyone, but just the types that you run into. You get some that are still pretty much human, just kind of enraged, and they're just starting to have that like takeover of their brain by the parasite, and then as you go through the game, we can see the greater progression of the takeover. They definitely get more plant-like and a lot more fungal. Like, even some of them, they're called clickers. They're completely blinded at that point, and pretty much half of their head is just this mass of fungus and plants. So it's really neat.
Oh my goodness! Now, beyond the next Resident Evil remake, is there anything on your horizon for survival horror games that are going to be coming out soon that have your interest?
You know what? Not so much. The biggest thing I would say, though, is the sequel to The Last of Us. So kind of the segue into that. I'm definitely excited to see where they go and how that's going to play out. No pun intended. But definitely to see, if that's going to be more back to the horror element itself, or if that's going to be like stronger on the story side. I feel like the first game itself is so hugely story based that it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. But that would be, I would say, the one that I'm most excited for.
That's awesome. Now, before we jump off video games for a second, something caught my attention, and I always joke that people listening know that I send out like a short survey of like people, like fandoms that people are into. And one of the other video game franchises you listed, which is totally not survival horror, is Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Yeah. say that's also been like one of my all-time favorites. I think with that one, that was kind of just like a casual game I could put on at any time, in between just like relaxing to the music and just like mindlessly playing like the first ones where like your main initiatives are to like score points or like take care of like pretty basic goals. I always feel like I got super into the franchise and I've been a huge fan like throughout the series.
I know the feeling of having like one of those type of games to like just pick up and play casually, like, because I remember, I think it's back on, I don't know, PlayStation 2. One of them is like the SSX snowboarding one. I was like, I don't care. I don't care if I fall. I don't care if I progress to the next level. Like, I just loaded it up to play it for like 10, 15 minutes at a time and be like, okay, I've had my fill. I'm good. It's just like something to just, it's like almost turning off your brain sometimes and just like enjoying the game and the music.
Definitely. Oh my goodness, yeah. Like that was one of my go-tos, like in like probably like late middle school and all through high school. Like just big games of that series. And that's when a lot of them are still coming out. And yeah, that was definitely like my after school go-to growing up. So those games were always like really important and very enjoyable.
Absolutely. And I know that the Tony Hawk franchise, I've been hearing talk of like either them trying to do a new game or go in some direction, because I don't think that like skateboarding game, or not skateboard, yeah, skateboarding games. I haven't heard of like any like really like something that's taken hold of like this next generation of consoles of skateboarding.
Definitely. I know there's been a lot of talk of possibly, doing a remake or remaster of some of the original games. But I know the big company that produced, the originals and also the Underground series after that was Neversoft. And I know they dissolved some years back. So there's been a lot of issues with that.
Mm-hmm.
As well as I know a lot of folks in the fandom were really disappointed with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, which I think came out in 2015, just made by a completely different company. Because I think where people were expecting that same experience, it just kind of played a lot differently. The controls were rougher, and it didn't have that same vibe to it. So I think kind of going back to what you were saying with that, definitely like there hasn't really been much on the horizon in terms of like new skate games. So it'd be really interesting to see maybe another like startup company or like independent company take something like that over. I think that would be really neat.
It would be, because I think it's something that, some skateboarding games have been in existence as long as like the original Nintendo. There's always been some kind of skateboarding game. And I feel like it's something that, just like your Final Fantasies and your Resident Evils and your games like that, like a skateboarding game needs to be around like every generation.
Exactly. I completely agree. And I feel like it's not only introducing people to like that type of game, but it's also like the musical exposure and like these bands that have become, either huge or like cult classics because of the game. And I just think that's really cool.
It is. It's definitely, it's just like Smash Brothers and fighting games. Like everyone needs their game. Everyone needs their little competitive thing where they're like, "Oh, look what I pulled off. Let's see if you can beat that," kind of.
Exactly. Oh yeah, that was definitely me and my brother growing up between Tony Hawk, and there's also a lesser known game called Thrasher Skate and Destroy for the PlayStation 1. Yeah, that one was fantastic.
Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. On the flip side of you being into video games and Resident Evil, like the survival horror, the Tony Hawk, on the flip side, you are a cosplayer.
I am. I've been doing that for about a decade now.
How did you first get into cosplay?
So like I started really getting into cosplay in college. I was watching the anime Death Note at the time. It was like my freshman year, like the summer of my freshman year going into sophomore. And my friends in the anime club at school were planning a convention trip, and everyone was really excited about cosplay. And, you know, dressing up for like Halloween or anything like that, I'd always been like really into as a kid as well. So, you know, this is just kind of another excuse to make a costume or put something fun together. So I was all about that. Excuse me, the first time I ever cosplayed, like I said, I was watching that anime Death Note at the time, and I saw the character Misa Amane and decided, you know, she was the gal I was going to cosplay. I'm like, I love her. She's just so silly, and I just enjoyed her. And so I went to the convention dressed up as her, and everyone started calling me Misa on Wheels. Predominantly one of my good friends now, who I just met that year, she was working in the artist alley, and she said, "You're Misa, but you're on wheels. I'm going to call you Misa on Wheels." And everyone started calling me that, so that's how it stuck.
For whenever I have a cosplay guest on, because a lot of people on the podcast are cosplayers or have been cosplayers, one of the things I love to find out is, how do you pick the characters that you're going to cosplay?
You know, for me, it's always been characters I can relate to on some level. So with Misa, I think she's bubbly, but at the same time, she's like, I don't know, she like knows what's going on. And just, I really love her, and something drew me in about her. And like some other characters I've done are like Yuna from Final Fantasy X. I've always loved her. I don't know, she just kind of has a sweet side, but she's really determined. And just like, I don't know, there's just always been this connection. Like when I see a character, it isn't like, you know, as I get to know them, it's like, oh, maybe I like their outfit. Maybe I'll cosplay them. For me, it's like, oh, I really relate to them. I like them. I think I want to dress up and stuff. So it's kind of always just, I don't know, it's always just kind of been a personal thing for me.
I was looking at some of your cosplay pictures, and I was like, well, Yuna's there because I love Final Fantasy X Yuna. And then,
oh, such a great game.
Oh my gosh, yes, it is. It is one of those games, because I'm a big Final Fantasy person. I really loved Final Fantasy X, everything from the story to the Blitzball, the voice acting. I really enjoyed it.
Same, it's so good.
But one of my other characters that you have on, at least on your banner on your Twitter profile, is of Kiki.
Oh yeah, Kiki's Delivery Service. I would say Studio Ghibli, like I don't know, those movies have always been like way up top in terms of like favorites in the anime genre for sure. Like Kiki's one of my favorites. I would say Ponyo's another big one, but those are definitely some awesome gals.
Do you have any favorites that you've done? Ones that that you're like super proud of, like the cosplay or the character and what you've been able to accomplish with the outfit?
You know would be a huge one. I feel like the outfit, I actually ended up buying the outfit and modifying it. And my mom actually helped me with a lot of it, like kind of looking at it. And she doesn't play video games. Like she's not into this at all. She's like absolutely talented. So anytime I could come to her and be like, oh, you know, how do you think we should do this? Or can you help me fix this? Like she was all over it. So like that was kind of something we worked on together. I absolutely love that character. It made me so happy whenever I would wear that outfit, and it just got so many good reactions that I would say that's like definitely a favorite.
What is on your agenda, your cosplay agenda for 2020? As far as like, do you have? And I know cosplayers have lists miles long of who they want to tackle and what they want to tackle, but just if you have like a few that you'd love to be like, I'd love to get these done in 2020.
Definitely. You know what? I would say I've been kind of laying low. I actually broke my hip a couple months ago, so I've been kind of like laying low on my cosplay adventures. But I would say my big ones for 2020 would probably be, I would love to do Malin from Zelda Ocarina of Time. She's always kind of been one of those characters I've really loved, and I've always wanted to cosplay her. So it's kind of an easy one and something I could definitely see myself hopefully getting done. Let's see. Probably, you know, I'm definitely all about the old school of the 90s. My other real big one that I finally want to get done, and I'm almost done piecing together, would actually be Angelica from Rugrats.
Oh my gosh, Angelica from Rugrats.
Oh yeah, she was my girl.
That is something that I think I've been seeing lately in like some recent like on Instagram and stuff, is people cosplaying the 90s cartoon characters. And that's something that I've really enjoyed seeing people bust out those old school characters.
Oh yeah, because I mean, between the nostalgia and also just people's like absolute creativity and their take on the character, it's just so cool to see that.
That is awesome. Rugrats. I think, that's another show that I think my kids would like to watch, but I don't know if I'm sure it's streaming somewhere, because in the world nowadays there's streaming for everybody and everything.
Oh yeah, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the last place that I saw it was actually on Hulu. So I think they actually still have all the seasons. And you can blame me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they still have them. Yeah, and 'cause I remember rewatching them, like all of them, a couple of years back, and just so good.
There will be no blaming. I will not blame.
Oh, it's all good. They're misdirected.
For cosplay for you, what is the hardest thing for like you in cosplay? Is it like getting the idea and making it come to fruition as far as like clothing or the sewing, or is it just like working with different materials? Like what's the hardest part for you when it comes to cosplay?
Procrastination. That's the hardest thing, for sure. For sure. I would say, yeah, just between having so many different ideas and, like, oh, I bought this shirt that I'm going to alter, or I have all these pieces and I put them in a bag together and then just, not go back to it. Or it's like 1 week before the convention, it's like, oh, I guess I'll pull out Una again. But definitely procrastination. Just kind of like, I feel like I'm always someone to get things done right away normally. But with cosplay, I feel like it's like, oh, I have more time. It's okay. It's all good. I'll get it done. I always have. But then, the time comes, it's like, uh-oh. And I'm never really one to stress myself out. Like, I don't really do the whole con thing. So, like, I guess I'm nice to myself in that sense. Like, if it's like a week out, I'm like, I'm really not going to get this done. I'm like, well, I guess I'm finding my own costume. So I would say that's probably the biggest hurdle for me, though.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, because it's one of the things I always see, and it's one of the topics that we sometimes cover, is the con crunch. And it's just, I don't know how people do it. I don't know, like, getting to a convention and still having to like sew or do stuff with the cosplay. Like, I am constantly amazed by what people are able to produce, but then with like that crunch of just like getting it done, and like you have hours to do it, and it's like watching one of those cooking shows where it's like you have an hour to cook this, and it's like I can't. I could maybe open the can in like 2 minutes, but then I'm out 2 minutes.
Exactly. No, I totally get that, and I completely respect those people. Like, it's amazing, like, things people can just like whip out, and it's like, whoa. But for me, I feel like between, I guess it kind of goes along with the procrastination. It's just like, if I don't have it done by a certain time, I'm not going to like punish myself into being like, you have to get this done. I'm just going to be like, oh, there's always other conventions. So at least, like, I guess I give myself that credit on the stress reduction end of it. Always have a backup plan.
That's right. Always have a backup plan. I always see people saying, you can always wear the same cosplay more than one time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That is awesome. What is one thing that you, as a cosplayer, like, how is the cosplay community? Because I think you may be one of the first people that I've spoken with that live in, like, you live up in the Northeast, correct?
I do, yep, right in New Hampshire. So like an hour north of Boston.
I think you may be one of the furthest north in at least the United States that I've spoken with about cosplay. So what's the cosplay scene like up there? Because I've spoken with, people in Texas and California and Florida, and we have lots of conventions, but I'm not familiar with what happens up that way.
Definitely. So, oh my goodness. I would say one of the biggest things that I've noticed just personally is that when I go to conventions, I feel like everybody knows each other. That's a huge thing. Even when you think of, the Northeast, like between like New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Maine, and whatnot, all the other little ones surrounding. I feel like there's not only a lot of other like smaller local conventions up here, but like everyone kind of gets to know each other and like get a really good feel of, not only the people at the convention, but the conventions themselves. Like whether it's like a smaller anime convention that's being put on by like a local school, or if it's, a Comic-Con in one of the bigger cities around here. Like just I feel like it's a very tight knit community, and kind of everyone knows each other, whether or not good or bad.
It is something, because I almost feel like that's representative of the like, as a guy, I definitely feel it's representative of like the larger states, like Texas. I've spoken to so many people in Texas, and they say the same thing. Like everybody knows, it's like everybody knows each other, and everybody's like, oh yeah, I know like what their outfits are, and I know who they are, and I've talked to them, and they're on Instagram or they're on Facebook, and even in California it's the same thing. And I'm like, dang, like, I go to conventions, I'm like, I don't know anybody, I don't cosplay, but I try to be connected to see what's going on. But man, it is definitely like the cosplay community is definitely very close, as far as like,
Oh, sure.
yeah, it's just, it amazes me the closeness of cosplayers, and it makes me happy that like the communities are as they are, with like lifting each other up and being positive, and it's really great to see.
I agree. I totally agree. And I think with that, like you said, it's not so much the convention community, but like you said, the cosplay community itself. And like, I think that also creates, at these conventions, like kind of just a sense of like safety and security. Like, I know these people, they know me. If there's like anything kind of weird going on, or like anything, like we've had some instances with like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of recent examples. It's been a while, but like, oh, there's a photographer that's working at the convention, this and that. Like everyone kind of watches out for each other, and I think that's a really nice thing. And as well as, not only that, but like in terms of like the hobby itself, like there's so much more of people building each other up and helping each other out than, negativity. So it's really nice to see.
It is. It's super awesome, and I love that about the community. I love that, like, whenever I talk to people, it's always relatively positive. I mean, there is the call outs for the people that need to not be in that community, and I'm really happy that this been happening more as like publicly, rather than I think it's like people say like the whisper networks, where it's like, oh yeah, don't like it needs to be public to let people know, like, don't work with this person, don't commission this person, don't do this with this person, so that way everyone can know.
Definitely, definitely. And just to that whole idea of, people not being afraid to speak up and call that stuff out, like that whole idea of don't suffer in silence. And, it's so important that we bring these things forward, because, if that kind of thing spreads, that not only gives, like a bad reputation to the community, but also, the conventions. Like if they were inviting, somebody who was like that, or has, those negative experiences or negative outlooks toward other cosplayers, that convention is not going to want to, have them as a guest, or have them, be part of their brand. So it's important.
Mm-hmm. Now, I did have a question that's not fandom related, but
Sure.
on your Instagram, I see a very cute lizard.
Ah, yes, that's my Nacho. He's adorable. He's a 1-year-old bearded dragon, and him and I actually share the same birthday in August, so he's very sweet.
How did you come about to have Nacho?
You know what? I had actually had a crested gecko a couple years back named Drogo. he was very adorable, and he ended up passing away suddenly last winter. And I just decided, I'm like, I'm just going to casually look around and see what else is out there. I don't really want to buy another reptile quite yet. I'm not ready. But I was in a store up here, like a little locally owned place up in New Hampshire. And I remember going past the newly hatched bearded dragons for the year. And this little guy, my Nacho at the time, he was just like trying to get my attention. He was up on the glass, just like flailing around, like wherever I go, he'd be like following. And then I noticed on the tank hatch date August 11th. I'm like, wait a second, it's my birthday. And I told the guy, I was like, you know what, can I hold that one? And just as soon as he got out, he was just like on me. And I was like, oh, that's it, he's coming home. So the rest is history.
That is super awesome. I love, everyone, cats, dogs, that's cool. But I love when people have not to say it's unusual, but the unusual pets, like the birds and the lizards and the snakes, and it's really neat to see like just that interaction, being able to see like him on Instagram and like crawling around, and like there's one where he's on like this purple crochet blanket, and it's like the best smiley picture.
Oh yeah, that I actually have that picture as my lock screen on my phone, because every time I look at it, it just makes me smile. Like they just have, it's so funny because you're absolutely right. Like I have a cat, he's absolutely amazing. But like with the more like unusual and exotic pets, like just they have such personalities of their own, and it's so cool to see that.
It is. It's super awesome. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Now, for people that have listened to this podcast episode and they're saying, hey, I want to check out Misa and check out like her pictures and her Nacho and see what she's got to say about things, what are the best places for people to find you on the internet?
Definitely. So I would love to have you guys aboard. Facebook is probably the best way to find me. It's just under Misa, like Lisa with an M, Misa On Wheels. Also on Instagram. So on Facebook, it's 3 separate words, Misa On Wheels. Instagram, it's just all one word, no spaces, Misa On Wheels. And also like Twitter and probably like every other place I can imagine. But yeah, no, I'm pretty much anywhere and everywhere. And there's lots of fun cosplay stuff. I post a lot of, quotes and articles and such on my page, as well as cosplay photos. And the same thing with my Instagram. I would say Instagram is the prime spot if you want to get in on the Nacho exposure, though.
That is awesome. And I see on your Facebook page that you have a Patreon, and I love the pictures that you use for your saucy content, because those cracked me up.
I'm so glad you enjoyed them. That was actually, it was a joke that had started like about a year ago. I kept getting messages like, oh, do you have a Patreon page? I want to see more. And I'm like, oh, you do you? So I dressed the wheelchair up, and I'm like, all right, look at this. So yeah, the wheelchair bears all.
That probably is one of my favorite like posts of anybody's to like promote their Patreon is that post. It's just it's just so, it's so good. It's like, it's got the sass.
Thank you. No, I have a blast with it, and like I'm definitely going to get better with it this year. That's one of my my goals of the year, is to regularly update the theme wheelchair of the month I used to do. So I'm going to try to do a gamer girl and like an otaku themed one coming up, and then obviously like any of my normal cosplay adventures on there too. But we'll definitely keep the sauciness up.
Awesome. Well, Misa, I wanted to say thank you for not only, again, coming on the podcast and talking to me about the scary, scary, scary world of survival horror games and cosplay and Tony Hawk, but also for being, again, my first person to test out, getting a phone call and talking to people on the phone.
Oh, Well, thank you. I've honestly had a blast, and hopefully, everything comes in loud and clear. And if for any reason there's any issues, I'm always happy to re-answer all my questions.
Awesome. Well, again, everybody who has listened, please go check out Misa's work on the various links that will be in the show notes, the Facebook page, and our website, so that way you can check out Misa and all the stuff that she does. And again, thank you, Misa, so much for hanging out with me today.
Oh, you're most welcome, and everyone listening, have a great new year, and you as well.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.